So, what causes academic stress? And I want to talk about that today in terms of managing the academic stress that we all feel as professors. Maybe you're a student. We all feel these things, right? And that is a very real part of our life when we sort of think about it. And from my perspective, I'm just going to jump right into it. From my perspective, it's placing too much connection, too much weight on the actual outcomes that you believe will happen from the academic courses or the goals that you're pursuing within the academic arena. And that's really it at the end of the day. So, if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massack. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation and Strategy. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. All right. So, I study decision making and behavioral decision making. I don't study the sort of ins and outs of the brain. I can't answer the sort of stress triggers and stuff like that happen in the brain. I also can't really tell you a whole bunch of stuff with all the different factors that go into stress. But, how we process decisions, we have this sort of conception that human beings and other things around us, right, like other organisms, process decisions in the sense that they calculate alternatives and then they come up with the sort of criteria for assessing those alternatives, and then you pick that particular alternative. However, what ends up happening, I don't believe decision making actually occurs like that. That's sort of the basic decision making model. I think what we end up doing is that we fixate on outcomes and we think about the particular outcomes that we're doing, and we think that it should be easy to actually arrive upon those particular outcomes that are far off in the future. And we imagine those particular outcomes and we imagine what's going to happen with those particular outcomes. And then we determine that the steps that we see are really easy to actually get there. And instead, the reality of it is that how to actually get to wherever you're going requires a great deal of work and effort. It's not easy to actually figure out how to do those. It's not easy to sit down and put in the effort to do that particular stuff. None of it is really straightforward in any sort of way. And so I think the stress that we feel comes from, placing too much of an emphasis on those future outcomes and what's going to happen when we actually achieve those particular outcomes. You know what's going to happen when you're going to achieve those particular outcomes? Absolutely nothing. Nothing in your life is ever going to change when you reach those particular outcomes. What's going to happen is you're going to feel the same way, and it's all going to have the same there's very little difference between when you arrive upon a particular outcome and when you don't. And I think that's where you need to sort of realize that you have to detach yourself. And this is a sort of idea that I want you to get to, is that you have to detach yourself from the outcomes of what you're thinking about in various different ways. So first of all, one way that you can sort of detach yourself of actually that particular outcome is sort of walk yourself through the steps of actually what it takes to get to that particular outcome, right? And sort of physically think about, or do the test, better yet, not think, actually do the task for a day or two. Put yourself into that particular experience of what it actually takes to get there. So if you're studying, maybe it's a course, for example, that you're taking, well, then study for a few days and do a great effort of actually studying. And then you'll realize that, hey, it's actually pretty tough to get there. Okay, so that's one thing that you could do. The other thing is realize that that outcome really does not change a heck of a lot in your surroundings. It doesn't change, it's not going to change that much how you feel about yourself, right? It's not going to also change that much about what's going to happen in your life. If you do well at this one particular outcome, right, so you get that let's say you finish that course and you get an A in that course. It doesn't dictate a lot in your actual course or your actual life if you get an A or not, right? What dictates is you repeatedly doing that over and over and over again, which is a predictor of your actual behavior, of how you're going to manage things. And then that's why people actually like to hire you and do all those kind of things. It's because of your behavior and how you treat things. And so what the challenge that we're faced with is that there's a disconnection between what we're doing today and those outcomes in the future. And so we end up really, really worrying about those, right? And we start thinking about those. So thinking about how you can detach in different ways. One way is to, de-stress the importance of those particular outcomes. Another way is to just live your life, right? Come into the present day and realize what it takes. So if you have to, you want to get an A, or you want to get into this particular, maybe you're a professor and you want to get into, get tenure. What does it take to get tenure? Nothing's going to change at all by worrying about it and stressing about it. How it's going to change is you actually just start doing the work, or, you realize that, hey, this is my life and I'm okay with who I am. And as you go through these sort of moments, and we all go through these moments, right? It's not unusual in any sort of way. You have to come to terms with who you are as a person. And it's super challenging for all of us because we have this kind of idealistic view in our mind as human beings of who we are and where we're going to go, and the stories that we've told in our brain, the stories that people have told us, and that you have to get this particular thing, and if you don't get this thing, you're not going to be successful. Nobody's going to like you and care for you and all of that kind of stuff, right? But you have to sort of realize that none of that is true, right? That idealistic view that you have in your mind of how things actually work is not true. And what you have to look at is what is going on in the real world. Who and what is actually caring for you, right? So look around and see that people actually do care for you, for example. Detach from that notion of if I get an A, everybody's going to like me. What you need to do is realize that everybody likes you for who you are, not because you got the A. And that's a hard thing to come to. And I think that's one of the more difficult and challenging things because parents, for example, they really stress grades. And they really do. And to their detriment, right? Instead of stressing the behavior, instead of stressing that you're actually, a good person, and the way that you become a good person is just, live your life to its fullest. Rather than stressing grades, I think that's somewhat problematic in a lot of ways. And so what we have to do is come back to, what does it mean for me to be a good person? What does it mean for me to live a life to my fullest? And that is do the things that you need to do. And the rest of it kind of take care of itself, right? At the end, you kind of have to have that sort of self-belief. If you just keep doing good things, it's going to take care of it on its own. So that's it. That's what you have to do. Detach from those outcomes. Don't worry about getting an A. Don't worry about getting a 10-year thing or whatever. And just live your life. Be who you actually are. And be kind, generous, and look at what you actually do every day. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.